Now, Hadur, we now know that the ulama opposed him after claiming that he is the Imam Mahdi and Masih-e-Maoud. And as Imam Mahdi and the Masih-e-Maoud, he is supposed to do many things.
Right.
In Arabic, he came يجدد الدين. What are the ideas of the ulama of that time? What are their beliefs and their thoughts at that time, which
he rectified?
Right. The first point is about the life of the Messiah and his descent from heavens, for instance.
See, there is a host of such beliefs, and I'm going to count and you'll see how many there are, which he came to correct, and without that, no man with a true rational understanding could have genuinely believed in Islam, except for those who were born with those views and they never challenged them. But I'm going to explain one after the other. With regards to the understanding of the Quran, with regards to the understanding of God, with regards to the understanding of the Prophet ﷺ and other prophets, with regards to all the fundamentals in Islam, he removed misunderstandings and gave new opening for thought on the rational lines to follow the course of what may happen in future, and to understand the correct meaning. This plus correction of bad habits, unrighteous acts, and superstitious practices in Islam, which had become, or which had been borrowed in fact from the Hindu faith and the Hindu practices of superstitions, which always are a part of the idolatry, which do not really belong to those religions which are monotheists, who believe in the oneness of God and Tawheed, the Khalis. So these are the general areas, and many more which will come to me gradually. So let me start with about the Quran first. In the Holy Quran, there were many verses, like the ones I mentioned, who were considered to have been annulled and made mansukh by Allah, by some of the verses, and he said no. The Holy Quran is perfect, totally dependable. There is no change wrought by any hand, so forget about that. Neither by God nor by human hand. About many verses which spoke of Hadhrat Muhammad Rasul Kareem sallallahu alaihi wasallam, which were absolutely misinterpreted by the ulama, and they were disgraceful if taken literally. There he defended the Quran, and that is why we have a concept of Quran through his blessing, which is completely defensible in with regards to the attacks of the Orientalists on the Holy Quran. I'll give example. People, earlier writers, have been writing in the Holy Quran about Hadhrat Lut, that he offered his own daughters to the enemies. What sort of prophet was he? Are prophets like that? Can we ever believe that? Now, this is a commonly accepted belief even up till today by many ulama. Hadhrat Masih-e-Maoud strongly protested against all such things and said all prophets of Allah are absolutely innocent, and you have failed to understand the meaning, and you start attacking the purity and piety of the very prophets. What would be left of others? According to other ulama, Hadhrat Ibrahim alayhi salam spoke 3 lies. Hadhrat Masih-e-Maoud rejected this. In principle, he said, whatever you find misinterpreted by the ulama is their responsibility. As far as Masih-e-Maoud is concerned, he saw no reflection on the character of any prophets in the Holy Quran. They were pure and innocent. It was a great service. About Hazrat Rasul Kareem Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, you know what was said? It was said by the ulama, and perhaps even today so many say that once he entered the house of his own cousin who was married to Zaid,
Yes.
and who was also his adopted son. Zaid was his adopted son. And she was not properly dressed or was not in a carefully attired at that time. And ulama speak of other things which I can't even mention. He fell in love. And God saw it, but he was ashamed and he was afraid of the people, not of God. He was afraid of the people, so God told him in the Holy Quran, don't be afraid of the people. I know what is in your heart and what you are hiding. Go ahead and marry her. So that is why that divorced her and the marriage was arranged. It is so absurd, so shocking, so insulting to the very concept of Hazrat Muhammad Rasulullah that no sane Muslim of today should even entertain the thought. No question of investigation, that is out of question. It is impossible for Rasulullah to have done that. And they couldn't understand the import of that verse. So Hazrat Masih-e-Maoud rejected all this nonsense. Said all the prophets of Allah were innocent and pure and they committed no crime. This is, if he had done just one service alone, this service, and died, that should have been sufficient to prove him to be not only a mujaddid but a mujaddid of high order. About angels, you read in the Quran, in the commentaries, they think, the ulama of the previous thought, they had wings like ordinary people, like birds, and not ordinary people, like ordinary birds, and they flew from place to place and here to there, and there was one single angel of death running about, all the moment, flying from one place to other. There are not so many seconds in a day as there are deaths in a second. This was his task. And was this the only world, the only place with life? The Holy Quran says no, there are other things. So what sort of angel that was, and what sort of absurd fairy tale they believed in. And flying with wings. You only fly with wings if there is air, there is some space, you push it, and the speed must be very limited. But he is everywhere, it seems. So Hazrat Masih-e-Maoud wrote beautiful explanations about the concept of angels. He said they do not have your dimensions as you have. He proved from the Holy Quran that angel Jibreel appeared to Hazrat Muhammad Rasulullah himself in different forms and different dimensions. Sometimes filling the whole horizon. Sometimes coming to him as a very powerful, strong man and embracing him like this. Sometimes coming like a traveler who appeared before him, nobody knew who it was and where he came from, asking questions and disappearing. And the same Archangel Jibreel appeared to Jesus Christ like a dove. Or was it a pigeon? Pigeon perhaps, huh?
Yes.
Pigeon. Like a pigeon. Now, what sort of angel that was? Was it his own body? Couldn't be. So Masih-e-Maoud said that angels appear to you according to your own concept and understanding, and according to the greatness of the message which they bring. The message brought to Hazrat Muhammad was far more glorious and mighty. So the appearance of angel Jibreel was in accordance with that, great and majestic. And the angel, the message brought to Jesus Christ was that of submission, love, of course, a beautiful message, but a defenseless philosophy. So the birds like doves and pigeons, they are not birds of prey. They are just one-sided sort of birds, which only birds with some qualities, but not with defensive qualities. They are not provided with that mechanism to defend themselves. So this was indicative of what was brought to early Masih, the first Messiah. So he spoke of angels in so many ways and explained that in fact all the laws of nature are run by angels. And the chief of each department, so to say, is mentioned as the chief angel in that area. He said, don't you see that the death faces life at every moment, everywhere in the whole universe? And there are so many ways of approaching death. If we are alive, this is a miracle. But death is trying to strike at us every second, every split second of our life. And the same is the case with all other animals. So there is a regular system of life and death. And the system of death is controlled by the archangel of death, not Jibreel, but the other archangel, Israel. And Hadhrat Masih-e-Maoud proved it from the Holy Quran. He said, there are junood of angels you cannot count. If there are just these three important things and nothing else matters, why should there be hosts of angels who are uncountable? They are working under them. Some control the productive phenomena, the phenomenon of provision of food. So the food chains have regular laws controlling them. Hadhrat Masih-e-Maoud was informed by Allah, and this is how we came to learn of it. He said these food chains are not running automatically. Each law of God, which is fixed and never changes, requires some energy, spiritual and controlling energy, to keep them on the right path. Remove that energy, the chaos will develop. So this is the meaning of angels. And archangel is the angel of purity and piety. All the human faculties which help a man take the right decisions and act rightly are the phenomena controlled by Jibreel. So he is the spirit of holiness. But under him, each man is provided within him those angels who constantly try to advise him, do this please, this is good. And there is no angel for bad things. So Satan is appointed for that. But to record the right things and bad things, there are two angels, one sitting on the right, one sitting on the left. Not that bodily they are sitting. They are not like human beings. They are powers, forces, spirits, which we cannot fully understand because they belong to different dimensions. You see, for instance, if you take an ant on your hand, in the palm of your hand, and you claim that because I'm carrying this ant and it has eyes, it has ears, it can hear, so she would know that there is something like a man with all these faculties. But not the ant. You're only thinking for himself, for the ant. The ant only knows that something is carrying it, that's all, no more. What is the nature of man is totally beyond. So if an ant is questioned about the existence of man, it has no right to deny. But if the ant is asked, what sort of man you believe in, she will say, no, please forget about it. I have no idea. So if an ant cannot understand a man, both physical beings, how can physical beings understand the spiritual beings, which belong to different realms? So this is what Hadhrat Masih-e-Maoud told us, and no other ulama, read the books, Search far and wide in the pre-Islamic, pre-Masih-e-Maoud period of Islamic literature, you won't find any such thing. Then he explained about the Day of Judgment, how shall we be raised again. Then he explained about the hell and the heaven, the continuity of soul, in what form. You know, he rejected all the ulama's views, they thought were also based in the Quran. And Masih said, no, I'm going to point out the verses which are going to be decisive on this issue. Your concept of understanding of the Quran is contrary to the Quran and contrary to the understanding of Hadhrat Muhammad Rasulullah. For instance, how shall we be raised again? All the ulama till now believe that as you die, so will you be raised. That is why they issue edicts that you must not, according to the Quran and Hadith, donate your eyes after death, because otherwise you'll be raised without eyes. You see? This is their understanding, their height of their flight. They can't fly more than this. Masih-e-Maoud came from heaven, so his flight was heavenly. And he told us it's all rubbish and nonsense. They don't understand. Why don't they read the Quran? The Holy Quran says, وَنُنْشِيَكُمْ فِي مَا لَا تَعْلَمُونَ. We will raise you into something which you have no knowledge. So don't you have your knowledge of yourself, that you have one eye or two eyes, or your nose is working or not? And moreover, what about an old man suffering from rheumatism, a one-legged person, a blind man? He questioned, would the Maulvi say, Man huwa fi hadhihi ama fahuwa fil akhirati ama? So these blind people who have been memorizing the Quran all their life, they will wake up in the after world, in the hereafter, and they won't be able to see. See, don't be blind. This was the answer in the Shastra. Don't be blind yourself, or you will be raised blind, not these people. It's a spiritual faculty to see, which the Holy Quran is speaking of. So in this way, I'm just quoting a few examples in this area, but I'll turn to some others later on.
There will be questions, inshallah.
One other thing I want to add about the Zayd issue, very important. The Holy Quran rejects that concept completely and totally. That it was the love of Muhammad Rasulullah for that lady which initiated all this. It was exactly the opposite. According to the Holy Quran, Hazrat Muhammad Rasulullah said to Zayd,
I'm
going to read this. وَإِذْ تَقُولُ لِلَّذِي أَنْعَمَ اللَّهُ عَلَيْهِ وَأَنْعَمْتَ عَلَيْهِ أَمْسِكْ عَلَيْكَ زَوْجَكَ وَاتَّقِ اللَّهَ. Now he is saying to him, don't divorce her, fear Allah and keep it for yourself. If he had thought of marrying her because he had seen her in some pose, how could he do this? He should have said the other way around. So whatever these Maulvis have built as understanding of this is absolutely wrong. The Holy Quran doesn't accept it. What was Hazrat Muhammad afraid of? He was afraid not as against Allah, but this is what I believe is a genuine understanding of this verse. He was afraid that he was responsible for this marriage to Zayd. He had done it, he had asked her, his own family member, who belonged to an honorable Arab family. Marriage of an honorable woman of an Arab family with a slave was considered to be a great insult in those days. So she went to that extent of sacrifice for the sake of Hazrat Muhammad Rasulullah, that being his cousin, he accepted, okay, Ya Rasulullah, if you say, I'll do that. Now, Zaid had decided ultimately that he couldn't live with her anymore, for some reasons. That is why he went to him and said, for fear Allah, try to retain her. I'm responsible for this. Now, he was afraid that if this divorce took place, then people will say, look here, Muhammad Rasulullah made a wrong decision and he, in a manner of speaking, injured the feeling of the whole family by first advising her to marry this slave of his, and secondly, it came to nothing. Ultimately, she had to see herself divorced. So this was the fear, and for that he might have contemplated as a sacrifice. All right, if that happens, then I'll marry her, so that she doesn't suffer from being obedient to me. Now, this is a very noble thought. But when he might have thought of this, he could have thought of other talks. People might have said, he is mutabanna. He is his own so-called son. So he is marrying the divorced wife of his own son. So these were the fears and dilemma which Muhammad Rasulullah was facing. There was no desire on his part to marry her for his own personal sense of pleasure in any way. If it had been, he wouldn't have started by telling Zaid not to divorce. And imagine, Zaid, who was so obedient to him, so loving, that he refused to return with his parents, leaving Muhammad Rasulullah when he was offered complete freedom by Muhammad Rasulullah. Yet he did not accept this advice, which means there must have been things which had gone to an extent where Zaid thought that he will not be able to keep his taqwa intact if he had remained with this lady anymore, and he might have transgressed against her in any manner which would hurt the feeling of Hazrat Muhammad Rasulullah. So again, as I know Zaid from the traditions and solid reports, it must have been his love of Hazrat Muhammad Rasulullah which compelled him to reject this advice. You know, put yourself in his frame. He would say, if I accept Rasulullah's advice, which I would very much love to, and I can't tolerate certain situations, and I may burst into a frenzy or some outrage, and that would hurt Muhammad Rasulullah more than this. And this was the lady whom Hazrat Muhammad Rasulullah decided to marry for the sake of that decision of his, that she accepted his advice and offered this great sacrifice. If he does this, the talk of the town would be, that he marries the wife of his own adopted son. If he doesn't do that, then the talk of the town would be, look at Muhammad Rasulullah, his advice has gone in vain. So this was the fear. Allah said, I am going to decide. Don't fear what people say. It was not fear as against Allah. Allah said, you do it exactly according to taqwa. Fear Allah here means, don't take care of what people may say, don't bring it into your mental computation at all. Just act as you think. Fear of Allah requires you. And obvious answer was that he should have married her. So this marriage took place. And there is no sign anywhere after the marriage that she became a naturally beloved wife. She was quite advanced in age at that time. And she was being divorced for some reason. Something must have been in her habits which Zaid could not tolerate anymore, I mean. So he accepted her with all those possible dangers of some defect or something. This is Muhammad Rasulullah, you know, greatest of all prophets. Look at the ulama. Masih-e-Maoud came and enlightened us about all these things. He said of all the prophets, Muhammad Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam was the chastest and the most pious. And he couldn't have even cultivated a thought of sin in any form. Right?
Just I want to ask
one simple thing.
Some of the ulama says, وَاتَّقِ اللَّهَ is said not to Zayd, but to Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam.
This is absolutely wrong. No. It is Muhammad Rasulullah saying it to Zayd.
Yes, this is the way they think
yes.
about the
Yes.
Holy Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Allah is saying, وَاتَّقِ اللَّهَ, don't be like this.
Muhammad Rasulullah sallam is saying this to, look at this, it's impossible to translate it otherwise. وَإِذْ تَقُولُ لِلَّذِي أَنَّمَ اللَّهُ عَلَيْهِ وَأَنَّمْتَ عَلَيْهِ أَمْسِكْ عَلَيْكَ زَوْجَكَ وَاتَّقِ اللَّهَ. One sentence continues.
It's finished.
Then comes وَتُخْفِي فِي نَفْسِكَ مَا اللَّهُ مُبْدِيهِ وَتَخْشَى النَّاسِ. You're afraid, if I do this, this would happen, if I do this, that would happen. On either side, people will censure me. So clear. And this, you have rightly pointed out, you know, I can't understand, you know, what's happening inside their minds.
They are thinking of the Holy
Attribute
Prophet as themselves.
from Allah to Muhammad Rasulullah. Why don't you fear Allah? While Hadhrat Muhammad Rasulullah was atqan nas. He said, once speaking of taqwa, he said, taqwa is here, taqwa is here, taqwa is here. Now, whoever is the leader of taqwa, these ulama said, he lacks taqwa on that occasion. That who is presented by Allah as the symbol of truth, they say the symbol of truth lied here and there. What would be left of other prophets and what would be left of ordinary people? The whole world will be filled with vermins and wicked people if this is our model of prophethood, our concept of the model prophethood.
Another point, is it possible that Hadhrat Zainab was treating him not in a very respectful way because he...
Could be, but I doubt this.
No.
Because you know how long they remained as married couple?
Not too much.
No, it was not too short either.
Yes.
I can't believe this of Zainab because if she had this aversion to just being married to a slave or to Zaid, she had known her all her life, and she should have refused at the time when Muhammad ﷺ suggested this. So I don't think she did that. I think she was brought up with certain views and ideas and habits, and Zaid had a different way of life. So this could have created some frictions. Sometimes even small, manner of behavior results into divorces.
Yes.
Short, small things. Yes. Hazrat Muhammad ﷺ once was approached by a married Muslim lady who requested him to have her divorced from her husband. Hazrat Muhammad ﷺ inquired from her, why? Does he treat you harshly? She said, no, not at all. Does he give you any sort of problem regarding money and housekeeping and this and that? She said, no. Inquiring of this and that, the ultimate answer he received was, look here. No, not he said, look, he said, O Rasulullah, he is an excellent man, thorough gentleman. I have nothing against him. But I don't like him. I can't help it. Nothing is aroused in me to be his wife. There's enough reason, okay. So, such small reasons could result into breaking of marriages, and they were acceptable to Hazrat Muhammad. So why to attribute anything wrong to either of the two? I wouldn't. I shouldn't like to do that. Let's say, whatever it was, there was a clash of personality.
Yes.
It couldn't be
They
called.
couldn't make it together. Yeah.
And both being pious, why shouldn't we attribute better things to them?
Yes. What was?
The Holy Quran has told us that you should have rejected the evil things said of your own people. You know them, they are good people. You should have thought of good things. Husn Zan is important. So about Hazrat Zaid, I believe this was his psychology. He said, we just don't go together. I may lose my temper one day and say things to her which will hurt her and hurt Hazrat Muhammad Rasulullah as well, because this is the marriage of his making. And things like that. So let's think of good things. This is what Masih Maud has told us. Don't think of bad things about any of the previous pious people, be they prophets or their companions.